What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. I want to kind of explain a specific basketball case for why I think Darvin Ham needs to go. And to be clear, before I go any further, I don't think firing Darvin Ham would fix all of the Lakers' problems. You don't go 17 and 18 with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Austin Reeves healthy, with LeBron James and Anthony Davis playing better than they did last year at an all-NBA level, unless tons of things are going wrong. And so any one thing isn't going to turn things around. Darvin Ham didn't lose to the Miami Heat last night. The Lakers lost to the Miami Heat. The Lakers were the ones kicking the ball all over the damn court, not sprinting back in transition, completely incapable of making an open catch-and-shoot shot. The losing shooters off ball. Like the players are the ones who lost to the Miami Heat last night. So to be clear, firing Darvin is not going to fix all of those issues. That said, I do think there is a very clear basketball case that a coaching change needs to be made. And it's kind of different than some of the other LeBron seasons we've seen. Like, we remember the David Blatt year, and I don't think David Blatt tactically was mismanaging the Cavaliers. It was a voice in the locker room. He came in really arrogant. The veterans kind of pushed away from him. There was a rift there. They didn't listen to him anymore. They needed to make a move. Same sort of thing with Frank Vogel. Like, I actually think Frank Vogel's a much better coach than Darvin Ham. And I think he specifically on the defensive end schematically is one of the most advanced coaches in the league. And I think he brings a lot of value to the table. But it became clear that there was a separation in terms of the leaders of the team and just listening to Frank Vogel. And so a change needed to be made. The Darvin Ham case, I think, extends much further into the basketball realm. And so there are 4 reasons, in my opinion, why Darvin Ham has to go. First, they've been one of the worst energy and effort teams in the league this year. So I think the clear example of that is the difference between how good they've been in crunch time versus how good they've been at the start of games. This has been one of the 10 best clutch teams in basketball this year, and they've been really good on both ends of the floor. They've actually been a very good half-court offense and defense throughout the year. As recently as like a couple of days ago, they were top 10 in both half-court offense and half-court defense. They lose games on the margins. But if you look at the first quarter, they're 29th in first quarter defensive rating. They average trailing by 4 points at the end of every first quarter, which is second only to the Portland Trailblazers. So they come out every night and play bad basketball, which tells me they're not bought in to the basketball identity of this team. They're not bought into a brand of basketball that they want to play. They don't believe in what they're doing on both ends of the floor. Reason number 2, you use the word grasping at straws, and I entirely agree. He doesn't seem to have any idea what scheme he wants to implement with this group. I thought there was an interesting play in the first quarter last night that demonstrated this. It's a dribble handoff with Bam and Tyler Herro, where Cam was guarding Tyler Herro and Anthony Davis was guarding Bam. And Anthony Davis thought it was a hedge and recover. So he's coming out to kind of show on Tyler, and he's looking to recover to Bam. But Cam peels off and switches onto Bam and runs to guard him in the post. And AD looks at him like, what are you doing? And he's pointing at Tyler Herro. And then Cam goes and rotates. They make the pass to Bam, and he makes a wide open jump shot. One of the issues there is Darvin keeps switching up the defensive scheme throughout the season. They won the in-season tournament blitzing and rotating, an aggressive athletic approach to defense. And then Darvin just was like, never mind, we're going to try switching for a while. And so they just decided to do something different. And when you constantly are switching up your schematic approach, you end up being bad at everything. Because every schematic approach requires repetition in practice to get the rotations down, to get the communication down, to get the habits down to where you start playing good defense, right? And then on the offensive end, we saw this team make it to the Western Conference Finals last year with a 4-out, 1-in, spread pick and roll, and heavy post-up attack. And the 5-out attack that Darvin Ham implemented this year really didn't make sense for the personnel. If you want to run a 5-out attack, you either need to be an outstanding shooting team like the Warriors, which the Lakers are not, or a real downhill athleticism team like the Kings, which the Lakers are not. Since then, he's tried to implement other things, but once again, it's become a situation where the lack of commitment to an offensive identity has made them bad at everything. The third reason I think he needs to go, over tinkering with the rotation, which you mentioned. This massively disrupts rhythm and confidence and just the overall comfortability of these role players. And I think that's a specific reason why the role players beyond LeBron and Anthony Davis have all had down offensive seasons. I think it stems from the constant tinkering with the rotation. And the craziest thing about it is this is not a difficult rotation to figure out, in my opinion. There is a clear starting lineup. It's Austin, Torian, LeBron, AD, any one of the point attack guys. It can be Cam, or it can be Vando, or it can be Max. And as far as the bench groups, it's very clear that D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Davis pair really well, right? They're positive on the season. And it's really clear that Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Christian Wood trio pairs really well. And so this is not a difficult rotation to figure out, but because it's been constantly tinkering with it, here's 5 athletes and none of them can shoot, and here's 5 shooters and none of them can run and jump, and it turns into the situation where the redundancies just lead to these diminishing returns as the lineups have struggled. And so this has not been a situation where it's been a complicated rotation to figure out, but Darvin Ham has galaxy brained the whole thing, and everyone has suffered as a result. And the last but not least, you guys said in the report, I should say, that there were 6 different reports or 6 different sources. I think it was either 5 or 6. Yeah. I can't remember, but there's a half dozen sources that are saying in the locker room that they're frustrated. That to me is a clear sign of almost like a schism in the locker room. And at that point, like, there's no version of that where like everyone's just like, never mind, let's buy back in and go do this thing again. And so to me, when you couple all of those together, you have the same Vogel, David Blatt case of like the guys just aren't listening to him anymore. But then you have this clear basketball case for why Darvin Ham just quite frankly is not the guy to maximize this group in terms of basketball on both ends of the floor. So now that I'm off my soapbox, I want to ask you specifically. The Laker front office has been quiet, and there hasn't really been much on this front. I actually poked around about a week ago and just asked if some people that I know, like, is it even something that's on the table? And I was hearing no at that point. And so my question for you is, do you actually think there's a chance Darvin gets fired? Have you actually heard anything from the front office that would lead you to believe that decision is on the table?
Yes, I think it is on the table, and I think it's not going to happen today, probably not going to happen tomorrow, but if this skid continues with this homestand that they have coming up, 23 of the first 25 days of January are in LA. That includes a road game against the Clippers. But if they somehow come out of that skid under 500 and potentially even sooner, I mean, if they play Memphis on Friday, they lose that game. Then they play the Clippers on Sunday. They lose that game. Now you're 3 games under 500. I think that's in play at that point. So I think, to what you just said, I have been monitoring this during the skid and checking in with people, and it had been nope. I mean, the guy made the Western Conference Finals last year. They won the in-season tournament a few weeks ago. Like he's fine, but the seat warming has started, and if we were comparing this to a car, I think it's on level 1 out of level 3, but that could easily go up to level 2 or 3 with another loss or two, just because of like you have it. You're in a win now situation with LeBron and AD. Like this isn't, oh, let's see how this year goes, and then we always have next year. Like it's championship or bust for this group this season. And I think they're going to approach the trade deadline with that mentality, but they also have to approach the on-court product and the coaching and the rotations with that mindset as well. And if Darvin isn't getting through to the guys, whether that's on him or on them or some combination of both, at some point that becomes a real issue. And, again, the Lakers, like LeBron and AD have missed the combined 5 games. That has not happened over the last few years. And for them to be this healthy and under 500, it's insane. And I still can't really believe it. Again, even with the schedule, even with the injuries, like they've had their top 4 players basically every night. And in most cases, that should be enough to at least be above 500. So, I think that the seat has started to warm. I wouldn't say it's hot yet. I would say it's warming. But we'll see how the next couple games go, and if the Lakers come out, because again, I think you hit on something. Like last night to me was a really bad body language game for them, and they eventually turned it on in the second half, and they've shown in spurts they can just kind of flip a switch where all of a sudden they get into back into these games despite trailing by 10, 15 points, whatever. But to me, some of the body language was just really bad. And, by the time we got in the locker room had cleared out, aside from the guys who still had to talk to the media. So it was just, the vibes last night were as bad as they've been all season. Understandably so, again, losing to a Miami team that they felt like they should have beat, considering who was out. And Miami being on, I think they're on like a 6-game road trip right now. Again, like, I think it's in play, potentially sooner than later with Darvin, but I think it's going to have to take this skid extending a little bit more before that happens.
I think the one thing that could stop the skid is Darvin just picking and sticking with something.
I agree.
You pointed out last night that was the starting lineup that you specifically had called for a while, and it's more or less the structure that I was calling for too. Like, it really doesn't matter to me who's at the 2. Like, all 3 of those guys are flawed. Sorry, like, all 3 of them have certain, like, Max Christie, as much as he's more of a two-way version, like, he's got so much of that young guy decision making thing going on where he will just make a catastrophic like pick 6 turnover or something like that just kind of kills the momentum of the game. So like, all of them kind of come with flaws, but he did pick a starting lineup that I agree with. And again, as far as the bench rotation, it is challenging when D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura are out, because in the current configuration of the team, they are important bench players. But I think if he sticks to a simple rotation, kind of like we talked about, like those Austin, LeBron, Christian Wood groups really work. I think it's important because Austin in a 2-man game with LeBron is just so much more impactful offensively than when he's running it with some of the lesser Lakers players. D'Angelo Russell is the one ball handler, non-LeBron, that seems to have really good chemistry with Anthony Davis to get him the ball where he needs to get it. So like, I think there's a way they can configure that. A big thing too is like, they need to pick a defensive identity and stick with it. Like, to me, I don't like the switching simply from the standpoint of, I want Anthony Davis at the rim. I want Anthony Davis at the rim as much as possible. End of a game, like, oh, it's the Western Conference semis and Steph's calling for the ball in game 4 and he's running pick and roll. Yeah, switch AD, try to get a couple of late game stops. But for the most part, I would look to run that. You can vary between, a high drop, a low drop, a blitzing scheme based on the opponent. But I would have chasing over the top of screens and Anthony Davis staying on the center as much as possible. Lean into that and see what happens. I'm just not sure if he's going to. For him to say once again last night, after he finally lands the plane on the lineup that you and I have been calling for, that he might leave no stone unturned. It's like, that's the problem, dude. That problem, dude, is like, no matter what lineup you pick, you might have a bad night in there, right? Like, just like those starters, the ridiculous starting lineup kind of manhandled the Oklahoma City Thunder on that one particular night, right? Like, it's not about the one night. You've got to stick with something for a while and actually give these guys a chance to figure it out and get better.